Queensland's got the longest fence in the world. Oh, hi, I'm Stella, and welcome to 30 Books Goes to Queensland. Little bit of audio description before we start. You busted me reading the Reader's Digest off the beaten track. I'm sitting in a light-filled lounge room. Behind me is a vase full of hibiscus. There's a flowered and patented lamp as well. There's a painting behind me of green sugarcane or bamboo, I think it is. I am wearing a wonderful caftan. It's a brown and it's got pink and white big blue flowers all over it. I'm wearing a big orange ring. I've got my big blue glasses and I've got a big white flower in my head because we are in Queensland. 30 Books does go to Queensland. It's a big state, so everything has to be big. And my two Queensland books I've got for you today, both by writers living in Melbourne, but Queenslanders originally. I have Riptides by Kirsten Alexanders. I think I'd call this a crime fiction or a family drama. Hard to know which one. And I've got a memoir written by two people, Rebecca Lister and Tony Kelly, Growing Pineapples in the Outback. Now, don't forget to stay to the end of the video to find out what they get with their royalties or percentages of the book sale. So the percentage of what it cost me to buy this book. First book we're talking about is Riptides. A one-band decision can tear your world apart. Does it ever? This is Kirsten Alexanders' second book, but she actually wrote it first. It came out in beginning of this year in 2020, and I went to the launch. And for somebody so funny, she writes cracking great serious crime fiction. So the story involves, I'm not giving any plot away here because it starts off with a bang, literally. So Abby and her brother Charlie, who has been drinking, and he's driving the car in rural Queensland. He has just landed from Bali. Abby's going to pick him up. They jump in the car. It starts with an accident, a head-on crash, because Charlie falls asleep, swerves over to the other side. They're fine. The other driver is killed instantly. They go and check it out. It's a young woman, and they take her out of the car, and she is also heavily pregnant. They make a decision to leave her there because, as Charlie argues, she's already dead. Nothing good can become of this. I will go to jail if this happens, and you will be complicit because you allowed me to drive knowing I've been drinking. So she's kind of manipulated into a situation, and they leave her there. Now, there's very heavy rain at the time, so that will wash away traces and any fingerprints, but they have moved her. This is where things get really complicated. They are all sorts of entanglements and leads. Everything is linked to who and to everyone, and one series of events leads to more series of events. Charlie's a bit of a man-child. They're both in their mid to late 20s. Abby is quite young, but she's got 3 children. So this is 1970s Australia, when people were getting married and having children quite young. It wasn't considered young then, but maybe nowadays it is quite young. And Abby's husband just happens to be an investigative journalist. Now, this young woman, was she running away from somewhere, or was she running to something? And she's linked to a farm which Mark starts to investigate. And in the meantime, 1970s Queensland, there was a lot of police corruption, and that's hinted off as well because the police start honing in on Abby and Charlie, and their father is also linked to this accident as well. I don't want to give away too much more. Why is it set in 1970s Australia or 1970s Queensland? Now, at the time, Australia was in major social change. University had just to become free, and Abby has made the decision. Her life was set to change before this accident for the positive. She was going to go to free university, much to the chagrin of her father, who believed that a woman's place was in the home, and what was she doing? And her husband was, you know, there's hints that he actually works for Four Corners. So she was going to be a lawyer. So, but then at the same time, Queensland was very repressive and also quite corrupt. So it's an interesting period with which to set it in, and they all act according to that particular time. And Charlie talks about how Bali is being ruined, and because Charlie has a restaurant there. He's pretty dysfunctional young guy, and he is in love with his best friend's partner. So everything is linked. Everything. It's very skillfully done, and this is a fantastic book to read during lockdown too, because I read it really quickly and I love. So that's Kirsten Alexanders. Now my next book is a memoir written by Rebecca Lister and Tony Kelly, Growing Pineapples in the Outback, and it's the story of Rebecca and Tony moving up to Mount Isa to care or to be with Rebecca's mum Diana, and they're still living in the family home. They each take it chapter by chapter, and within that Rebecca talks about her formative years in Mount Isa, and again a lot of it set in the 1970s, because she would have left home when she was in the 1980s. Talks a little bit about some of the history of her family, which those were the aspects that I absolutely love. Now I have to say Rebecca actually is a friend of mine, and I don't know whether I loved those stories because I know Rebecca and I could hear Rebecca's voice and I was just championing her the whole time. But I think it is just a beautiful story. I think it's something that will resonate with a lot of middle-aged people who are perhaps caring or looking after or being with their older parents. And she has such a great relationship with her mum, and her mum is very articulate, very smart. She's in her early 90s. She's still doing crosswords. It also talks about Tony also discusses him moving to Mount Isa. So both of them have full, rich lives, and both have careers in Melbourne. Rebecca is a playwright, a dramaturg, and she's just started up a small drama company after doing her masters in playwriting and theatre. Tony is a lawyer. They have 2 young adult daughters, and they make that decision to go to Mount Isa. And it's also about feeling a little bit like an alien, or it feels very foreign, especially for Tony, whereas for Rebecca, she starts to make roots in Mount Isa, which is what the growing pineapples in the Outback suggests. And it's also suggestive that she's making the best of being in the Outback. So she starts plotting the garden and buying lots of plants in the backyard and tending to it, and they make a small space under the house. So it is that fight, I guess, for a lot of people who come from a different country, maybe a bit stronger for countries, or perhaps move states, and you go home and you think, oh, maybe I could make a life here, or is my life somewhere else? So can highly recommend this book. I thought it was absolutely beautiful, and I did cry in the end. So that is Growing Pineapples in the Outback by Rebecca Lister and Tony Kelly. Now, I bought Kirsten Alexander's book from the Avenue bookstore in Elstonwick. Gorgeous independent bookstore. Cost me about $30. So for 10% of that, that's $3. And what can you buy for $3? I'll tell you what. packet of bananas, lolly bananas. Yum. And I was lucky enough to go to the launch of this book as well, and I bought this book from Riptides in St Kilda, again at about $30. So what can you get for $3? Actually, guys, you get $1.50 each. You can get some pineapple lumps, my favourite. So that's your 30 books for this time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the notification books. What sort of books have you read set in Queensland? Who are your favourite Queensland writers? And I'll see you next time on 30 Books.